Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California is joining us. He's a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, why do you believe, first of all, that the condolence call that the president placed has become so politicized over these days?
Good evening, Wolf. And first, let's just remember who these individuals are. We're talking about Brian Black and David Wright and Jeremiah Johnson and LaDavid Johnson. I mean, I don't think their names have been said enough. The politics seems to dominate this. But for the families, they just deserve the peace of, knowing that their loved ones are remembered for how and who they were. And I think the president, if the family wasn't happy with the call that he made, call him again and express your sorrow in a better way, and this story would have been over. And it's just so sad to see, Gold Star families continue to be, hurt by this president when they need, him to be consoling them.
Was it appropriate, Congressman, for the White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders today to argue that John Kelly, the White House Chief of Staff, a retired four-star Marine Corps general, shouldn't be questioned about this because he is a retired four-star general?
Of course he should be questioned. I'm being questioned by you right now, Wolf. America's leaders are supposed to be questioned. That's what the soldiers who fight and sacrifice for our country, that's what they're fighting for, is the ability of the press and our constituents to question us. I respect John Kelly a lot, but he's not above questioning any more than I am.
But let's discuss the ambush that led to the deaths of those 4 U.S. soldiers. Was there an intelligence blunder that led to those soldiers being blindsided by 50 ISIS-affiliated terrorists who all of a sudden came up well-armed and killed these 4 soldiers, injured 2 others?
There is a blunder somewhere, Wolf, and the families are owed an accurate explanation as to what happened to their loved ones. And I think the best way you honor the dead who have fought and served for our country is to take care of those who are still serving, and that means looking at the conditions that our troops continue to serve under. We have 1,000 now, as you reported, in Niger, and that number has grown over the past few years. And so I think Congress needs to look at the conditions that they're serving under, the terrain that they're covering, and the length of time that they're there, and make sure that proper restraints are put in place. And this is a larger issue we're dealing with, Wolf, and we see it in Syria and Iraq, is that we're operating under authorities that were granted in 2001 and 2003, and we haven't revisited them. And I think we owe it to those who serve to put some restraints in place.
Yeah, I suspect, Congressman, that most Americans, they know there are thousands of U.S. troops still in Iraq and Afghanistan, now in Syria, but they don't know there are thousands of U.S. troops potentially in danger, not just in Niger, but a lot of other countries in Africa right now. Are you fully briefed on what their mission is?
We are briefed, but I don't believe that we've received, consistent updates about the growing presence in places like Niger, or what the cooperation is with other services, and what are our, what resources do they have if they come under attack. Clearly here the response time was not enough. It wasn't fast enough to save their lives. Now the culprits here, Wolf, are not the U.S. or the French. It's ISIS. I mean, they're the ones that killed these soldiers. We shouldn't forget that. But we should also do everything we can to make sure that if soldiers are serving in harm's way, that they have all of the resources and force protection around them so that something like this doesn't happen.
Your committee, the House Intelligence Committee, is investigating the allegations of collusion. I want to talk a little bit about that. Listen to a comment made by the CIA Director Mike Pompeo yesterday.
Can you say with absolute certainty that the election results were not skewed as a result of Russian interference, especially given what we've learned just in the last few weeks? And more importantly, are we vulnerable in 2018
well,
and
2020?
I'm not sure there could be
anything. I'm not sure there could be anything more important than that.
Okay.
That we conducted an election that had integrity. And yes, the intelligence community's assessment is that the Russian meddling that took place did not affect the outcome of the election.
Not necessarily precise. The public report made public by the Director of National Intelligence, and that was released in January of this year, stated the intelligence community did not make an assessment of the impact that the Russian activities had on the outcome of the 2016 election. That's a direct quote. So what's your reaction to the CIA director drawing a different conclusion than that report? By the way, the CIA later clarified what the conclusion of the national intelligence community was.
His statement doesn't reflect the facts or the findings, and it actually only reflects the belief that the president has, which is, not fully accepting the Russians' role in interfering in our election. And Wolf, speaking of troops, I've led a group in Congress called Future Forum. I've gone across the country with my 27 youngest House Democratic colleagues. Almost everywhere we go, we talk to young service members. 1 million millennials served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what they're so concerned about what Russia did is that we are losing our freedom to choose. And that's what they're fighting for, is the freedom of democracy and free and fair elections. And if we don't have unity at the top from our CIA director and our president that Russia did this, Russia will use that disunity that we're seeing right now in the United States to sharpen their swords and come at us again. And so we need unity and an agreement, a basic consensus on what Russia did if we're going to protect future elections.
Yeah, the intelligence community did conclude that the Russians interfered in the U.S. presidential election. They tried to sow dissent here in the United States. They tried to undermine, hurt Hillary Clinton's campaign, and indirectly help Donald Trump's campaign, but there was no bottom line assessment on whether or not it had a direct impact on actual votes that were cast. Congressman, stand by. We're going to resume this conversation, but to coexist with a nuclear North Korea, adding that the country's ultimate goal is to achieve a power balance with the United States. We're back with Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, North Korea says its nuclear weapons are non-negotiable. The President's National Security Advisor, General H.R. McMaster, says acceptance and deterrence is unacceptable for President Trump. So what are the options, realistic options, on the table right now if North Korea holds firmly to its position it will never give up its nuclear bombs?
I agree with National Security Advisor McMaster. It's not acceptable for North Korea to have a nuclear weapon. And, prior presidents, I think, in earnest tried to denuclearize North Korea, and we should, continue to seek to do that. However, this president has applied an inconsistent approach. You've seen success at the UN where we've applied sanctions, and then within 24 hours of a sanctions vote where you've gotten China and Russia on board, which is not always easy, you see the president undermining that work by threatening nuclear action against North Korea. I think you just have to do the hard work, continue to pursue sanctions, continue to engage China on this issue, and get other countries to have multilateral sanctions as well. And just as we did with Iran, we will hopefully bring them to the table, but exhaust all of those options first before just immediately going back to the nuclear option and putting Kim Jong-un in a corner where he could act out and to strike.
But the Kim Jong-un regime clearly believes if it were to give up its nuclear capability, the regime would be endangered. The only thing that keeps it going, if you will, is this notion that they have nuclear bombs. Is it realistic to believe they will ever give up that nuclear capability?
It is. I have hope, Wolf. I'm optimistic. We saw Iran give up their nuclear capability when folks said that never would happen. We are allies with Japan and Germany today when they were our enemies, decades ago in World War II. But it takes time. And, of course, there would have to be an economic package or a way for North Korea to come back to the table of nations and, be an economy that can sustain itself without just threatening the world or conducting, these bank raids, as was previously reported. But that takes time, and it takes American leadership. And I still believe that this president, if he wants to, and he can be focused, can stitch together our allies and engage China. But if he's going to just be the same old Trump, he's going to get us dangerously close to a nuclear war.
But here's what the North Koreans say. They say, look at Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. He gave up his nuclear weapons program, and what eventually happened to him? He's long gone now. They believe that if they were to do the same thing, they would be long gone. And diplomacy over the past 25 years has not worked. North Korea right now probably has at least 60, maybe 80 nuclear bombs. The U.S. intelligence community, as you well know, believes they can miniaturize those bombs, put them on warheads, and they're close to having an intercontinental ballistic missile capability. Diplomacy has failed for 25 years.
Agreed, Wolf, and I'm not defending the prior administrations. It has failed, and President Trump, should seek, to have success in this area. And again, I don't accept that, just because what happened, with Gaddafi or in Iraq, that it has to be North Korea's fate. But that takes, dialogue, engaging first our allies, then engaging China, and then bringing North Korea into the conversation. It's going to take time. It's not easy, but I believe that our fate does not have to be dying in Donald Trump's nuclear-provoked war. I think we have better options than that, and American leadership has always avoided great crises like that when we want to lead. So this president, time to lead.
Congressman Eric Swalwell, thanks so much.